It is DFS season here at Club Fantasy FFL. It's conference championship weekend. We're down to the final four NFL teams, and we're going to be breaking down both games in two separate videos. This particular video is going to cover the Washington Commanders versus my Philadelphia Eagles. So stay tuned. Oh, Captain, my Captain, this is Club Fantasy's DFS Showdown slate videos. We're going to be breaking down this week's NFC Conference Championship, the Washington Commanders versus my Philadelphia Eagles. I'm Josh Hudson, the host. With me, our DFS expert here at Club Fantasy, Mr. Austin Amandolia. Austin, were these your final four teams that you picked? I'm just curious.
They were not. Definitely not the Commanders. I mean, I played enough basketball that I could probably argue that all four of these teams were somehow in my final four, because I did have a Washington lineup that just didn't make it that far. But, you know, for the most part, this makes sense. The Commanders going from 6.5 game over under win total to start the year to this, that was not expected.
No, not at all. Jaden Daniels has been as advertised. The defense, however, not so much.
Also as advertised.
Fair enough. All right. Before we dive into this NFC Conference Championship and break it all down for your DFS Showdown slates, Austin, tell everybody where they can play these DFS Showdown slates against us here at Club Fantasy.
Yes, we will have contest on our DraftKings League, which you can join by following the link in the show description of this on YouTube or on your podcast platform of choice. We will have 3 total contests this week. There is a contest that is posted that is both games together. It's a full 9-person lineup. We will also have showdown slates for each contest, so you can choose your own adventure. Try and take it across all 3. They are $2 contest entries. With there only being 3 contests, you could potentially win on 3. Who knows? Like, Josh won 4 last week or 2 weekends ago. 2 weeks ago. So it's possible. You could do it.
It is very possible. And then you can spend all that money over at Trophy Smack. Head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF, and get all of your achievement-based needs. You won those fantasy football championships. Spend a little on DFS, spend a little to celebrate you. You could even get stuff for the losers of your league, or show a little love and appreciation to the thankless job that is your commissioner. Any and all commissions that we earn from you using this direct link, that's trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF, goes towards our ability to support women in sports through our Women of Fantasy Football brand. We've lucky enough to be able to send 4 amazing women to the Super Bowl this year to cover the big game. We'd like to be able to provide them with more than just the passes. So when you buy that belt, that championship ring, trophy, wall smack, etc., all of that goes towards helping some amazing women establish and create dreams and memories. And from now until January 31st, anytime you purchase a championship belt or trophy, enter promo code WOFF. That's WOFF at checkout and get yourself a free championship ring. Once again, trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. All right, Austin, let's break it down. Our first segment, Captain Chalk. These are the chalky captains that everybody is likely to pick because you know their names and they're just that damn good. And Austin, I feel like you could make a case for at least one player on each of these teams. But I like how you're catering to the host and talking about Saquon Barkley.
Yes, that is the only reason I put Saquon Barkley for this category. No, jokes aside. So it's ironic because I guess technically Saquon Barkley may not be the most rostered captain on the slate because quarterbacks are usually the most rostered players on the slate, but Saquon Barkley is at least going to push for it. He's definitely going to be in the top 2, I would say. I think he will be more highly rostered than Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts hasn't hit that ceiling outcome as much this year as we have seen in years past. The thing I really want to talk about here is I think it's worth taking the chalk. Like, I don't care if Barkley is 25% rostered in the captain spot. I'm still playing him. I think not playing him at all is a mistake, except for in rare circumstances. Like if you're playing 20 max entries or 150 max entries, yeah, you should have some lineups without Saquon Barkley because you will get significant leverage. But I'm not trying to come underweight on Barkley this week. I am going to continue putting him in my lineup, particularly in the captain spot. Both games he's played against the Commanders this year, he has scored 30 plus DraftKings points. And I don't see a reason for that to not happen again this week. Honestly, one of the most shocking things that happened to me in the Washington-Detroit game last year was Detroit running the ball less in the second half. Now, Washington did a better job defending the run, but also to some extent Detroit abandoned the run. And some of that was game script oriented, but Jahmyr Gibbs was running all over Washington last week. And Washington has been a bad run defense down the stretch. I don't think Philadelphia is going to run into that same mistake. I don't think that they're going to get behind the way that Detroit did last week. And so I think the game script is going to help them stay behind Saquon Barkley, and he is going to roll.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that work in Philadelphia's favor here. Part of that is their ability to control the clock, and they do that because they have an extremely talented running back like Saquon Barkley, and it helps to play really good defense. Everybody wants to point to Washington's 36 points in the second meeting between these two teams earlier this year. Let's stop and remember that Jalen Hurts did not play the second half of that game, which is why Washington was able to take Saquon out of the equation. I think he had 20 or 21 carries for like 40 yards in the second half of that game. So don't see that happening this week unless, knock on wood, God forbid, Jalen Hurts gets knocked out again. But speaking from one quarterback going to the other, our next segment, the Mutineer, the Contrarian Captain choices that offer some variety and upside in some of these larger tournaments. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. The real chalk captain here could actually be Jaden Daniels because, well, he is that damn good.
Yeah, he is. And I think the only reason I have him here is because I do think it's possible that Barkley does out-roster him. But Jaden Daniels, look, you just mentioned the 36 points that Washington put up on this team last time. It's the same defense. Like, Jalen Hurts or not, Jaden Daniels tore up this defense the last time these two teams played.
They're missing
I think was
as well.
Yeah, and there's no Nakobe Dean. I'm sure you have more insight into their roster situation than I do right now, but I know at least no Nakobe Dean. That's a big deal for Philadelphia. He's really stepped up this year. So Jaden Daniels is in a really good spot to perform well here and to be able to push. Now, I do think Philadelphia is a good defense, so I'm not going to get carried away putting Jaden Daniels in the captain spot, but I do think that, at least in my mind, as a non-biased football fan, it is hard for me to imagine Washington winning this game, just based on the rosters of these two teams. And I think that will seep into people's mentality when they play this DFS Showdown slate. And because of that, I think it is worth considering what happens if Washington does. What is the pathway for Washington winning this game? It's probably through Jaden Daniels having the game of his life. And if that happens, he needs to be your captain because it will be an optimal strategy for showdown contest.
Yeah, the Eagles defense is down Nakobe Dean. They did end up losing Quinyon Mitchell in the divisional round game, but by all accounts, him as well as Jalen Hurts are good to go for Sunday's game. And let's not forget the other guy in this category. A.J. Brown's been dealing with some injuries as well, and it's really started to affect his play of late. Why do you like him as another contrarian captain option?
Yeah, I have to call him up because of the fact that Saquon Barkley is going to be so highly rostered. I think it is sheerly a game theory move at this point is to play one of the two primary Philadelphia Receivers, I think AJ Brown is still the better option over Devontae Smith, but I can make you could tell me you're playing Devontae Smith in your captain spot, and I think that's a really great way to attack this as well. Because in the off chance that Saquon Barkley doesn't score any touchdowns in this game and only scores 15 DraftKings points, there's a good chance the receivers, having them in the captain spot, is what's optimal here. And so if I'm playing a 3-max contest, I'm having one that Saquon as my captain, I'm having one that has AJ Brown as my captain, and then I'll kind of decide on the third one. It might be Devontae Smith, it might be Jalen Hurts, it might be Jaden Daniels. But the point being, if I'm playing multi-max enter contest, I want to have some exposure to the pass game in my captain slot because of the leverage that it would give me. That doesn't mean I'm not playing Saquon Barkley as well or playing him in captain spot in most of my lineups. I just think you can't talk about this game without just naming the fact that there is a scenario where Barkley doesn't hit his full ceiling, still plays well, Philadelphia still wins, and it's the receivers that help you win a showdown contest.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about how little the passing game has put forth in the playoffs, really, and honestly, the whole season for the Eagles. I mean, Jalen Hurts didn't throw for 3,000 yards this year. Hasn't topped 150 in either of the games that they've played so far in the postseason. So there's definitely some worry heading into this passing game. But I mean, we saw when they played Pittsburgh, when you doubt the passing game, they come out firing. So I mean, we know Hurts can throw the football. They just haven't needed to because Barkley's been so good. So, but let's move on to the next segment here. That's going to be the first mate, because every captain needs a reliable crew. These are the standouts that help maximize your lineups. Let's stay on the Eagles side. Dallas Goedert doing some fun things this postseason, and gotta love a good stiff arm, let me tell you.
Yeah, exactly. And he's been getting the targets, he's been getting the usage, scoring touchdowns. Like, it's kind of astonishing. In some ways, he kind of feels like the number one receiver on this team right now because he's getting more of the output than AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are. And so I really like him in this spot, in part because it's salary savings, and in part it's a way for you to get access to the pass game without having to pay up for AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. And so if you're playing a lineup with Saquon Barkley in it, and you say, well, somebody's going to catch the ball, they are going to pass the ball some, I think Dallas Goedert is the person to go to because he's going to catch it enough and it's not going to cost you that much. Whereas trying to squeeze AJ Brown and Saquon Barkley in, you may not get the ceiling output you need from both of them for that to pay off, especially because you're going to have to punt one of your positions off a cliff and probably take a goose egg at that position because of it. So I like Dallas Goedert as a more moderate approach. I think that I've built a lineup so far where I basically didn't play AJ Brown. I played Dallas Goedert, and I think you could even make a case for saying maybe Grant Calcaterra scores a touchdown and you play both tight ends. Now, I don't recommend that in small fields, maybe in large fields. So I'm looking at the tight ends in the pass game a little bit more than I am the receivers, just because of how the ball has been dispersed in recent weeks during the playoffs.
Makes sense. All right, and this next guy, I'm going to give you some shit on this, Austin.
Yeah.
Because when I brought up De'Ami Brown last week, you said, I mean, it's 1 week.
I know.
And the dude does it again. Are we heading to a trend here where Washington just has a new wide receiver 2 every 4 weeks of the season?
I am so mad about this. I literally, before you were even going to give me shit, I put his name down. I was like, I'm going to have to just eat crow on this because De'Ami Brown, I guess, is a thing again. Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, he's never really been a thing in the NFL. He's been really fast. They just haven't thrown him the football. Now they're throwing him the football. So.
Now they're throwing him the football. But I will say, I would still consider Olamide Zaccheaus because he's going to be low rostered. Like, it's as a game theory move.
Zaccheaus, can you?
I can't get off Zaccheaus. And there is a part of my brain that says, you know what? I'm going to get on De'Ami Brown this week because he's done it 2 weeks in a row. And then Zaccheaus is going to pop. So I will still have a roster that has Zaccheaus in it because I just like, I can't not. But I see the appeal of De'Ami Brown. He has gotten the targets. He got 8 targets last week. I don't understand why they were like, oh yeah, now this player is relevant. I also don't understand why they traded away Jahan Dotson to then use Diami Brown. Whatever. But
yeah, because
here we are.
Dotson's been so good this year, let me tell you.
They don't, y'all don't play 3 receiver sets.
Really don't.
So, anyways, Diami Brown, he's getting the target share. And it's really like, if you need a cheap Washington player, it's Diami Brown is the person to go to. I will shout out Zach Ertz as well. He's been playing really well. Technically a revenge game for him, although he's gotten this revenge game twice this year already. So I don't know how much revenge is left over in his heart. And he's been a little bit hit or miss. So it's really just to say, I really think any of the 3 cheap Washington Commander pass catchers outside of Terry McLaurin could be viable, and they're a totally fine way to go to save some salary.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, Zach Ertz scored the go-ahead touchdown in their second meeting, and I think he's got plus 2,500 odds to score the first touchdown in this game in the playoffs. So, interesting bets for you if you're into betting. Our next segment here is going to be the deck scrubbers. These are the cheap punt plays that can make or break a lineup based on one play, limited opportunity. Austin, I got a bone to pick with you because Jake Elliott damn near cost us the freaking game in the divisional round. And the last time you put a kicker, they sucked. So if this is your like way to try to jinx us and keep us from the Super Bowl, you might be looking for a new place to record these.
Well, you know how much I love Philadelphia sports teams in general, right? Like they're my favorite. No, I'm Atlanta through and through. Hate all of the Philadelphia teams. Sorry, Josh. No, I'm not trying to jinx you. If I did, whatever, like collateral damage has to happen. But no, I actually think of Philadelphia, Kansas City Super Bowl would be really entertaining. Whatever. Anyways, Jake Elliott, he still scored 11 DraftKings points last week. And really, the thing here is the same thing it was when I was talking about Kaimi Fairbairn and Harrison Butker last week in that game. Like, the player's cheaper than these 2 kickers in this game. Who the heck is going to have a touch? Like, it gets really gross really quickly. I'm going to stall for like 30 seconds so I can pull this up and call out some names, because that was my biggest problem is I have to find someone cheap. And once I get past,
teams are pretty top heavy with their
exactly
with their star players, and that's where they funnel a lot of their production.
So after Jake Elliott and Zane Gonzalez, we get the Eagles defense. Okay, that's fine. Olamide Zaccheaus. Well, he hasn't been too reliable here lately. The Washington Commanders defense, don't feel great about that against Philadelphia. Then we get Kenneth Gainwell, who's going to get 3 touches and no more. Jahan Dotson, who, after scoring a touchdown in the wild card round, didn't get a target last week. Jamison Crowder, somebody that we'll talk about in a minute. Grant Calcaterra, who didn't get a target last week. Jesse Bates, Luke McCaffrey, Johnny Wilson. Like, it just gets so gross after the kickers. And the thing is, the kickers could score 10 points, and one of the players I just named could score a touchdown, but it not matter because the kicker scored 10 points. So it's literally just because I feel like there's no ceiling with any of the players that are cheaper than the 2 kickers.
Yeah, you'd almost have to be betting on one of these guys getting injured, essentially, in the middle of the game, and that's when they step up. So, yeah, 100%. You did mention Jamison Crowder. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about him because he's not actually on the show sheet here, but I think he fits really well into the deck scrubber category because he has played so well over these last 2 games because Jaden Daniels has spread the football around so much.
Yeah, that is true. Although he did lay a goose egg against Tampa Bay, but he had 2 catches for 25 yards last week. So, like, that's a situation where, like, Jamison Crowder, if he ends up scoring a touchdown in that situation, like, he probably does pay off. So there are some options down here. I just am. It's hard to get slim pickings, and I would lean towards a kicker more often than not in these situations, especially in those small field contests.
Yeah. So, sticking with the Washington side of things, they have a pretty well-established top 2 in Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler. Jeremy McNichols seems to get some run. Like, they're really rotating these 3 backs. Even after Brian Robinson scored 2 rushing touchdowns last week, I believe McNichols added a rushing touchdown.
He did add a rushing touchdown. He had the rushing touchdown that basically sealed the game for Washington. It's really, this is like an alternative. So honestly, I'm inclined to play both kickers. But if you're like, I don't like playing both kickers, and I get that, I think Jeremy McNichols is a decent pivot option because they do like to run all three running backs to some extent. McNichols doesn't get a ton of touches, but he gets some. And it is a situation where I do think Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, they both kind of have a tough style of running. They both run really hard. Austin Eckler's a little bit smaller bodied, even though he's very muscular. And they both have missed games, left games early with injuries. And so while I don't bet on injuries, this is a backfield where Nichols is already involved, and the two backs in front of him, like they tend to come in and out. And so I think it's fine to bet on him. I'd almost rather play both kickers than reach for McNichols. But in this range, I think McNichols and then maybe Jamison Crowder, like you mentioned, are the only guys that have any sort of upside for me at the salary price.
Makes sense. Friendly reminder, you can play these showdown slates against us over on DraftKings. Hit the link in the description, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on your favorite podcast network. Each contest is $2. Come try to take our money. See if you can beat me, because I apparently like to win these things. Just throwing that out there. All right, our last segment here is the Kraken. These are the lineup traps that sink the ship. Last time these two teams played, both defenses allowed over 30 points. Difference was the Eagles actually created 5 turnovers. So tell me why you are staying fully away from both of these defenses, outside of the fact that both these offenses can light up a scoreboard.
That's the main reason. Actually, yeah, both offenses can light up the scoreboard, and honestly, both offenses have been pretty good at protecting the ball this year. Jalen Hurts has not been throwing a lot of picks, turning the ball over a ton. Saquon Barkley sure as heck hasn't, and Jaden Daniels has been incredible at protecting the ball this year. We talked about it last week when we talked about the game against Detroit. By the way, great call by me, not playing the Detroit Lions defense. I think it's again another strategy this week. Honestly, I will say, like, if you're playing that 2-game slate, maybe you play Philadelphia, but I think I would rather pick a defense in the Buffalo Kansas City game, because that game I feel like is way more likely to hit the under than this game is. So if you're playing a 2-game slate, I would look elsewhere from this matchup, because it's a 47.5 point total line. I honestly think it hits the over, if not for no other reason than I think Philadelphia's offense is going to overpower Washington's defense, and then that pushes Washington to keep up. So I just am avoiding both. Maybe I would pick Philadelphia from the side. If I'm picking any defense from this game, it's Philadelphia, because I do think they can get the sacks. But again, it's Jaden Daniels. It's going to be a little bit tough for them to do it. But if there's a path for the defense to work out, it's going to be Philadelphia.
And your last pick here, the backup running back for the Philadelphia Eagles, Kenneth Gainwell, and all of his 4 touches a game.
I was going to say, does it count as being a backup if you get like less than 5% of the touches? He's truly a backup, I guess, then in that case, because he only comes in if Saquon Barkley is injured or they're up by like 3 touchdowns.
Or he just reeled off a 60-yard run and just needs a quick breather.
Yeah, fair. I don't see this game getting out of hand. I think Philadelphia wins, but I don't see it getting so far ahead that Gainwell gets significant touches, and barring a blowout, he's not going to be that involved. And unless somehow, like, it can't even be that Barkley falls down at the 1-yard line and needs a break, because then they just brotherly shove Jalen Hurts into the end zone. So there's just not really a pathway here for Kenneth Gainwell. And I would rather, again, he's in that price range. I'd rather go with the kickers.
Makes sense. And one friendly reminder, head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Get all of your championship swag and help us in our continued efforts to support women in sports. All right. He is Austin Amandolia at Austin_FFL. I am Joshua Hudson at the One Hudsonian. You, of course, can follow and should follow Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel as we continue to grow in this space. Stay tuned for the next conference championship video as we march our way to the Super Bowl. Peace out, y'all.